You guys have any issues with that? Please let me know. Okay. Am I audible? And I hope you can see me on the screen. Is my camera on? My camera is on. Just want to confirm that you're able to see me on the screen. A quick yes on the Q&A box. Yes, perfect. Thank you so much, Sakshi. Welcome back. You were there yesterday as well. Yeah, so we have a few more people joining us, I believe. Yeah, all right. So it's sharp 5 p.m. I believe we should start with the session now. Yeah. All right. Hello, everyone. A very warm welcome to all of you again to the second session today of the GRE Made Easy series by ACC. We had, you raised your hand, people who are raising their hands. I hope you have questions. I'll take them later. Thank you. Okay, yeah. So a warm welcome to all of you to today's session again. This is the second session. And this is, as I said, a part of the GRE Made Easy series. Today, of course, we are going to have a more strategic discussion. We are going to talk about a specific topic, which can, in a way help you ace the GRE verbal reasoning section. So today's session is primarily aimed at making the GRE verbal reasoning a little easy for you. We are going to do a few questions, understand a very basic approach on how we look at those questions and how we solve those questions. I am particularly looking at something that sort of is a bit of a problem when people prepare for the GRE test, in the verbal section particularly. So the agenda of today's session is very simple, to make you go through some questions which can become a bit of a problem if you're not really sure about the approach. And so my discussion will revolve around all that today. And so by the end of the session, you should be able to understand what is it that I can work on in order to ace the GRE verbal reasoning section, particularly on the exam. So we are looking at that today. So all those who have joined us, thank you for joining us. And I am hoping there are a few more people who will join us in a bit, because I'm sure the message has been already been sent. But anyway, we'll start with the session today. For those who were there with us yesterday, I will request you to stay a little patient, because I'm doing a few things which I've already done, which is to give this introduction to the GRE exam. Introduction to the GRE is something I did cover yesterday, but just want to give a quick overview, and so that we can directly get to the topic. For the ones who joined us for the first time, just want to let you know that there is a specific reason why you write the GRE exam. So what it stands for is the Graduate Record Examination. It's a test that you write when you want to apply for your graduate school programs or graduate programs, which includes masters and sometimes PhD as well, if you're looking at PhD. And most of the schools that you apply to outside India, they expect you to have a GRE score. So one of the reasons you'd write the GRE exam is if you wish to get into a graduate school. Okay. Why write this exam? Well, simple. The reason you write this exam, as I said, is to get into a graduate school. But also, in a way, this exam boosts your academic competence, or in a way, this exam, the GRE exam, can in a way help or enhance your academic bracket. So when you apply to any university, your academics are taken into consideration, of course. So you always know that my CGPA has to be great. But even if my CGPA is not that good, what do I do? So GRE gives you that boost. In a way, it makes your academics look better. So the purpose of the GRE exam that way is to actually help you enhance your academic competence. Okay, in a way, it will sort of give you that boost required for your academics, right? So if you're applying to any schools abroad, any admissions committee that looks at your GRE score, looks at it from the perspective of your academics. So in a way, it's adding value to your academic bracket. Okay, there are other things also you have to take into consideration in terms of domain competence and something more related to life skills competence. But we really don't want to get into the discussion of that, because that takes a lot of time. But at this point, understand that in entire application, the academic part is where the GRE will add a lot of value. Okay, that's one thing. Now, what skills will be tested on this exam? Very simple. You should understand that the GRE is not about your language skills. It's about your analytical and reasoning skills. So if you're somebody who's preparing for the GRE exam, please keep in mind that your logical reasoning skills and your analytical skills are being tested, and that's what you're preparing for. Okay, nowhere are you looking at this exam as one that is based on your language skills. So just make sure you're very clear about this particular idea. Okay, now moving on to the next part, where it comes to the GRE sections, particularly the exam is made up of 3 sections overall. If you look at it, the verbal reasoning section, quant reasoning section, and analytical reasoning section. Analytical writing assessment, basically the analytical writing parts that you see, which are mentioned twice there. Analytical writing is basically divided into 2 tasks, 30 minutes each. The analytical writing assessment task is the first part of your exam. It's the first thing on your exam. So when you start writing your exam, the first thing you will encounter is the AWA, which is analytical writing assessment. You'll be given 2 questions in that. This is a writing task that requires you to analyze before writing. So you're supposed to analyze the given case before you write something, right? So you're supposed to analyze and write. So it requires analytical skills, but as you write, you're also supposed to reason well and give evidences that support your idea. So it requires you to have reasoning skills in place as well, right? So analytical writing task is the first task on the exam, which requires you to write analytically, but at the same time with proper logical reasoning and evidences to back your position, right? So there are 2 questions, both of which are fundamentally a little different, but yes, somewhere they will require you to analyze. The questions will be given to you in such a way that you're supposed to analyze before you write. Okay, and you're supposed to sort of plan a response before you can write a response, right? So that's how it is. That's the first task on the exam. Okay. We can get into the details of this, but again, that's not my agenda for today. My agenda is something else. This is just to give you an overview of the exam, right? After you're done with the AWA, which is the first part of the exam, the first section of the GRE, then you move on to the objective sections, which is made up of 2 things, verbal reasoning and quantitative reasoning. Verbal reasoning, as mostly people misunderstand, is related, as people say, it's related to your English language. But I did sort of clarify this yesterday, and I'm repeating myself. Verbal reasoning section on the test per se is all about your ability to reason. English is just the medium over there. Please do not consider verbal reasoning as a test of English language. English language test is separately, made for you. You know them as IELTS exam or TOEFL exam or PTE exam. Like these exams, okay, are testing your English language skills. GRE, on the other hand, is not something that's testing your English language skills. This is more reasoning. English is a medium. So verbal reasoning is where your reasoning skills are being tested. It happens in the form of, certain statements and certain ideas given to you, passages or information given to you, which you need to understand, analyze, reason well, and accordingly solve questions. So it's based on logical reasoning. English becomes the medium there. Okay, so do not misunderstand verbal reasoning as English. Understand it as something that requires you to have reasoning skills in place. You're supposed to be logically strong. That's the idea. Okay. Quantitative reasoning, again, is a part of the objective section on GRE. Requires you to have mathematical skills. Yes. But again, somewhere it requires you to understand statements really well, understand the questions really well, have a proper logical reasoning in place. So all these things, again, are commonly required, whether it's verbal reasoning or quantitative reasoning. Basic skills that you're required to have is anywhere there, but also on top of that, as you keep attempting questions one after the other, you will realize that somewhere your logical reasoning has to be strong, but you need to understand information properly, interpret them correctly, look at the questions properly, and then solve questions accordingly, right? So somewhere, again, you're required to have logical reasoning skills and analytical skills. All these skills go together when you're attempting the GRE exam, any section for that matter. So that basically becomes your objective part of the test. Again, I don't want to get too much into the details of this because, as I said, this is just to give you an overview, but we can get into the details maybe some other time when I'm discussing particularly the exam pattern. That's really not on my agenda for today. I want to directly get to the topic. And again, the scoring scheme is something I discussed yesterday again. Something that you should know, that the verbal section and the quantitative reasoning section, both sections are scored on a scale of 130 to 170. Basically, that's like a 0 to 40. So verbal reasoning is scored on a scale of 130 to 170, that's 0 to 40. Similarly, even on quantitative reasoning, it happens on a 130 to 170 scale, which is again 0 to 40. So your overall verbal plus quant score is on the range of 260 to 340, where 260 is 0 and 340 is 80. Overall, it's an entire 260 to 340 range, which basically becomes an 80-mark test. If you want to look at it as 80 marks, it's an 80 marks exam, which includes both verbal and quant sections. So 2 verbal sections are scored and 2 quant sections are scored. Together, it becomes a test out of 260 to 340, which is combining verbal and quant only. I told you a while back that analytical writing assessment is a separate part where writing skills and analytical skills come together. It's a slightly different topic, which is subjective in nature. So the score that you get on AWA is on a different scale. The scale is 0 to 6, where 0 is the minimum and 6 is the maximum you can get. The increment is also slightly different. Again, the details of it is something I will give you maybe when we are doing a specific session on analytical writing sometime during the I'm sure I will do it in the future, where I'm only focusing on AWA. Maybe I'll give you more clarity then. So for today, I hope just a general idea is very clear to all of you. So now going further, okay, now getting to the point, the verbal section on the GRE verbal section particularly, okay, you know that there are 20 questions given to you and you are given 30 minutes to solve 20 questions. Now, 20 questions, 30 minutes, if you see how the 20 questions are actually divided. So in every verbal section, there are 20 questions which are divided into 2 different question types. Okay, if you see this slide carefully, if you see it says 6 text completion questions, 4 sentence equivalence questions. If I combine those 2, it becomes sentence completion kind of questions, where those 6 text completion questions and 4 sentence equivalence questions actually come under this category of sentence completion. We will call it sentence completion for our own understanding. So sentence completion is basically text completion questions plus sentence equivalence questions. So those 10 questions are so you can simply call them those questions with fill in the blanks. So you actually find these questions, and we'll be discussing a few today, but you'll get to see that fill in the blank questions, okay, are out of 20 questions, you'll see 10 questions out of fill in the blank type, or let's just simply call it sentence completion questions. Okay, so out of 20 questions, 10 questions are of sentence completion type, fill in the blank type, that is. And 10 questions, the other 10 questions are of reading comprehension type, where you come across passage-based questions. Okay, so in short, you're basically looking at 2 kinds of questions out of 20. One is those fill in the blank kind of questions, which is 6 text completion questions and 4 sentence equivalence questions. Those become sentence completion or fill in the blank kind of questions. The other 10 questions are basically of reading comprehension type, where you're given a passage and you're given some questions based on that passage. So passage-based questions, right? So 10 plus 10 make it 20. This is one verbal section. Also remember that when the verbal section is given to you, it's not like the first 10 questions are of one type and then the next 10 questions are of the same type. So for example, here, you don't get like the first 10 questions are of all fill in the blank type and the next 10 questions are of reading comprehension type. No, that's not how it is. It's going to be a few sentence completion blank-based questions, then a few passage-based questions, then again a few blank-based questions, and then again a few passages. So it's going to be a mix of all these questions together that come towards. So you're given this section where it's a mixture of SCs plus RCs plus SCs plus RCs. So blank-based questions, let's say the first 5-6 questions are blank-based questions, then a few questions of reading comprehension type, then again a few sentence, blank-based questions, then again a few reading comprehension questions. So it's going to be a mixture this way. It's not going to be all blank-based questions. First 10 are all blank-based questions, the next 10 are RC, reading comprehension, passage-based questions. No, that's not how it is. It's going to be a mixed bag. Okay. So you, by the way, on the GRE exam, remember that you have this leverage of moving back and forth within the section. Now for the 30 minutes that I get, okay, I have to solve 20 questions in 30 minutes. So if I look at it, I mean, I might feel that, okay, I have 1.5 minutes exactly for every question. If I divide 30 by 20, I'll see that it's 1.5 minutes per question. But obviously, uniform distribution cannot happen that way, right? I'm sure not every question is going to take 1.5 minutes. And we have to understand the nature of the question and see that, okay, whether or not this question should take a lot of time or can I do it in less time? So managing the 30 minutes properly is always a challenge. So I have to first understand which kind of questions, which questions take more time and which questions are less time consuming. I have to have this clarity to begin with. Once I know, okay, these questions generally take less time, I'm going to invest my time initially on those questions and finish them off. Then I'm going to take the next set of questions where I know I might take some extra time. But if I finish things early on questions which take less time, I will have enough time for the questions that take more time. So I will be able to manage both. So this balance has to be there in some ways. Now, out of the reading comprehension passage-based questions and the blank-based questions, if I compare these two, okay, mostly, more often than not, I think everybody who eventually starts preparing will say this to me, that the reading comprehension question types generally takes more time. So if you see the passage-based questions, no matter what kind of a genius you are, passage-based questions will take more time. I think most of you will agree with me on this, that passage-based questions, the reading comprehension questions take more time. Versus when I look at those questions in comparison to the ones where there are blanks, so the blank-based questions are generally going to take less time to solve. So out of the 30 minutes, the first thing I have to do is I get to choose the order in which I have to solve questions. So the 30-minute time that I have, I can choose which questions I want to solve first and which questions I can keep for later. The advantage you have on GRE is once the section starts, the verbal section starts, you can choose the order in which you'd like to solve questions. So for example, if you want to solve all the SC questions or blank questions to begin with, and you want to do the reading comprehension questions later, you can always move back and forth as many times as you want. But remember, only till the 30-minute timer is on. Right? So as long as a 30-minute timer is running, I can move back and forth as many times as I want to. Once the section is gone, as in once the 30-minute timer is up and the section gets auto-submitted, then I can't come back to that section, of course. But as long as the 30-minute timer is running, I get to choose the order in which I can solve questions. So I want to finish those questions which I can do quickly. So I will take up those blank questions to begin with, the fill in the blank questions, SC questions, finish those, and then move on to reading comprehension, because the blank based questions generally take less time compared to reading comprehensions. This is generally how it is. Now that I have mentioned what we can do about, the way we can attempt these questions, let's understand that if I have to solve the blank based questions quickly, what is it that I have to do? Now, remember when I say that, you can solve these questions quickly, one of the things people tell me is, if I do quickly, I might make more mistakes. So more often than not, people think doing something quickly means you're bound to have some problem with accuracy. Your accuracy is bound to, get compromised when you're doing things quickly. But please understand, doing quickly does not necessarily mean that you will compromise with the accuracy. These two things can be managed together. You can do things quickly and with good accuracy. How does that happen? So basically, the problem is approach. Now, when it comes to an approach, generally speaking, so if I'm solving any SC question to begin with, let's say, for example, I'm doing a text completion question, I have to be sure about the approach that I would like to take when it comes to solving a question. Now, I will simply tell you that there are two steps that you have to keep in mind when you're solving questions. I can actually sort of make you sort of write a lot of things, but obviously we don't have a lot of time. So I'll give you a very, very quick overview of what exactly I mean by having the right approach. Okay. So when you're given a text completion question, you have some options and you're given the sentence with some blanks in it. So I'll just give you an idea of what I mean by the right approach. When I'm reading the sentence, my focus must be very clear on certain things, which exactly help me understand what are the hints in the sentence. So when I'm reading the sentence, my focus must be on certain things, which I'm going to show you. And then when I'm down to the options, then I have to focus on something else. So when it comes to the sentence, there is a specific focus. There are specific things which I focus on. And when I'm down to the options, the focus is on something else altogether. But these two have to work together for you to, be able to get the question right. But if the approach is very clear in your head that this is what I'm looking for each time I'm solving a question, then I think basically your life will become very, very easy. Okay. Now, in this case, I'm going to make you understand two things. Again, we can't get into the depth of this a lot because this is quite wide, but I'll just give you a quick overview of what I mean by the web. This is first understanding the web and then understanding the 12. Okay, I'll give you an idea of what this is. Let's first understand the web. Now, when you're reading a sentence, okay, when you read a sentence, I'll just give you just give you a sentence, okay? Generally speaking, if I give you a sentence and I tell you that John was studying really hard, okay, someone has raised their hand. You have a question, I'll take those questions later. Yeah. So I was saying that when it comes to I'll just give you a sentence first, understand that, and let's see what happens. So if I say John was studying really hard, however, he failed the exam. John was studying really hard, however, he failed the exam. If I give you the sentence, which word in the sentence caught your attention? John was studying really hard, however, he failed the test. You can type your response on the Q&A box. John was studying really hard, however, he failed the test. Which word caught your attention? If you can just type it on the Q&A box. John was studying hard, however, yes. Right. So you responded to that, right? So when you say however, okay, does it give you some idea of why he focused on however? Sakshi and Kaushik, if you guys want to also come in on this. John was studying really hard, however, he failed the test. What is this? Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah. So yeah, when I look at the word however somewhere, right, it sort of catches my attention because I know that this word however, right, somewhere, right, it just gives me an idea that it's changing the tone or context. So one of the key words that I'm looking at here in the sentence is however, correct? Similarly, if I give you another sentence, okay, if I say that in the recent climate change conclave, Mr. X condemned the government's policies which aimed at cutting down forests in order to improve infrastructural development. In a recent conclave on climate change, Mr. X condemned the government's policies which aimed at cutting down forests in order to improve infrastructural development. Okay. Now, when I give you the sentence, which word catches your attention when it comes to the sentence? Which word do you pick out of this? Okay, conclave. Sakshi, anything else? See, it doesn't matter whether it's a conclave or not. Okay, I think what you need to understand, Sakshi, is that when I say that Mr. X condemned the government's policies, I think the word condemn should give you some idea about what exactly you're looking for, right? Now, if I look at the two examples, One of the words in the previous example was however. Now, in the next sentence, I said Mr. X condemned the government's policies. Now, if I look at these two examples, one thing becomes very clear. There are specific words, like however is a specific word you focus on, which sort of gives you an idea that maybe the tone or the context is changing. Similarly, on the other hand, if I look at maybe a word like, condemned, it gives me some idea about the tone. So if you actually look at it, the entire web over here, so there are keywords which you can look at as standard keywords and variables. Variables is something that we just looked at as the word condemned, right? Applauded. Now, these kind of words are some specific words which give you the tone of the sentence versus standard words like however, and, not only, but also, right? Neither, nor, and so on and so forth. Now, these kind of standard words also play a specific role in the sentence. When you actually look at it, the keywords, the tone, and the context of a sentence are all interlinked. I mean, I do have a lot of points to make you write when it comes to the web. Of course, we don't have so much time. So at least at this point, I can just give you an overview that when I say the web, basically the keywords, the tone, and the context are all interconnected. There are specific lists of words that I can give you to, sort of for you to learn. And you can actually make yourself comfortable by understanding what those keywords are. But saying that, I mean, for standard words, I can give you a list of words and say, learn from this. But when it comes to variables, also you would know that there are words which change from sentence to sentence. That can be another thing we can look at. So the idea is that when it comes to the web overall, okay, we are supposed to focus on certain keywords, the tone and context, and all these are interconnected, which make it a web that you can use when it comes to solving questions. Okay, going further, when I say the standard keywords, I think I mentioned it in that web. These are those standard keywords that you can see. You can understand that these are words which are used in a contrasting sense. Then I have some examples over here which show you how that contrast works. Like we saw that example of however, you can see however is one of the contrast words, the standard words, of course, but it helps you understand how the tone changes. Like if I studied hard, if John studied hard, he should have passed the exam. But John studied hard, however, he failed the test, shows you a contrast. That's because the standard keyword, however, works as a contrast, right? It has that contrast effect in the sentence. So all in all, I think when it comes to understanding keywords, standard keywords, we have a list. You can see further that there is this list which goes on and on, right? But it gives you some idea about what these words do, right? The standard keywords have a specific purpose that it serves when it comes to the sentence. We are supposed to understand the nature of standard keywords and how they are used in a sentence. But unfortunately, unlike the standard keywords, I cannot give you a list of words and say these are the variable keywords that you come across, which vary from question to question. So no one knows what questions you're going to encounter on the day, right? So no one can give you a definite list of words and say, these are the words that you're going to encounter on the day of the test in the questions that you will get. No one can say that. So somehow when it comes to keywords, standard keywords, we can give you a list and tell you to prepare from that. But when it comes to question-specific keywords or variable words, which vary from question to question, unfortunately, we cannot give you a list of such words. But either ways, okay, if I focus on that example, condemned, applauded, or such words, basically in a sentence, they give me some idea about the tone. Now, the tone basically will depend on either the action words or description words in a sentence. So when it comes to standard keywords, we give you a list and you learn from the list and you're okay with that. But when it comes to the question-specific words or variable words, though there is no list for it, but if you are reading a sentence and your focus is on actions which are performed in the sentence or some kind of a description given to you in the sentence, either ways, that sort of gives you some idea about the tone of the sentence. So somehow the web is somewhere dependent on the two kinds of keywords, standard keywords and variable keywords, or question-specific keywords, as you'd like to call it. These work together, and that's how you're able to understand what the sentence has in it overall. As we do a few questions, you'll understand it even better. Now, the 12 that you see right now on the screen give you some idea on what sort of situations you can come across in a question. I'll show you how these 12 eventually help you solve any sentence completion or text completion question. So these are some basic 12 ideas or situations that we need to be prepared for. If we can take care of these 12 ideas, we should be able to solve questions quickly. Okay, so I'm just giving you maybe a minute here. All right, have a look at this question. So I believe we have Sakshi and some of you who are there. We have Keshav, Sakshi, and Kaushik. Okay, so if you guys would like to participate here and solve this question, what you have to do here is you have 5 options: A, B, C, D, and E. You have to read the sentence and fit one word out of these 5 options in the blank. Okay, based on what is given to you. All right, go ahead. Quick, you have a minute. 1 out of 5 options. All right, cool. All right, any other option? I mean, not so anonymous attendee. I'm sure you've got your reasons to say B. If you would like to give me a reason for why it's B, I'll be happy to know that. Okay. Yes, it is the right answer. Yes. But can you tell me the reason for it? Sakshi, would you like to come in? And I'm not sure if anonymous attendee is one of the participants, as in, is it Keshav or Kaushik? Kaushik or Keshav, if you guys want to also come in on this. Okay, no problem. I think I've given you a minute there. So let's read this question to begin with. It says, in parts of the Arctic, the land grades into the land fast. Okay, there's one more response. Okay, Keshav, you are sending the answer. Okay, no problem. Cool, Keshav, got it. Okay, no problem. So let's just read this question together. It says, in parts of the Arctic, the land grades into the land fast so dash that you can walk off the coast and not know you are over the hidden sea. Okay, so let's just understand what are the indicators here. Just a while back, I mentioned there are 2 kinds of keywords I'm looking at. One is the standard set of keywords, and one is more question specific or variable keywords. Variable keywords as in there are words that will vary from question to question, and basically it depends on the actions or description in the sentence. Now, in this particular question, I don't know if some of you really focused on so and that. So dash that something something something. Now, so and that basically here work as standard keywords. Let me just take you back to this. Can you see so that over here? It says cause and effect. Can you see so that here in the list? It says cause and effect. It's over here. Yeah. So if you actually look at it, okay, so that is a standard keyword and it shows a cause and effect, which means it's more like a similarity. So whatever comes after that, okay, it sort of goes with so and that. In a way, it shows a similarity. Now, after that, it says you can walk off the coast and not know where you are over the hidden sea. Now, this information is going to be somewhat similar to what comes after so. So something, that something, so whatever, that whatever, these two have to be somewhat similar to each other. That's what a so that does. That's the standard keyword in this particular question. Now, what do you think in this question is the variable or question specific keyword? Well, as I said, in question specific or variable keywords, your focus must be on actions or description or how it's described. Yes. Now, when you see the part after that, it says you can walk off the coast and not know you are over the hidden sea. What does this tell you? That you can walk off something and you don't know what it is. What does this tell you? You're walking off something, but you're not aware of what it is. You're not sure about what it is. So you're actually walking over this hidden sea, but the way they're describing is not know. So you don't know you're over something. So what does it tell you? That basically when someone is walking off something and you're not sure about it, which means after so, whatever must come has to be somewhat similar to this idea that you're going above something, but you're not sure about what it is. So basically what that tells you is that the person that does this is not clear or not even sure about what it is. So in the blank after so, what comes has to be something that shows that this person is not very sure of what it is, or not very clear of what it is, or not able to understand what it is. So basically with that in mind, let me come down to the options and see which one goes with not aware, not knowing something. Okay, if I go with that, permanently irregular, permanent, I'm sure you guys understand, has nothing to do with not knowing things. Irregular again has nothing to do with not knowing things. Relentless is non-stop. Non-stop again has nothing to do with not knowing anything, right? I am probably sometimes people do get confused between B and D, and I'll tell you why. Now here, there is something I would like you to show. The word precariously goes in the sense of uncertainty that is dangerous. So you're not sure of what's going to happen and it's dangerous for you. Something that can go wrong, something can collapse. You know, it's a precarious situation when you say that. So precarious tells you that it's a dangerous situation to be in. Now, when I read the part after that, it does tell me that you're walking off something, not knowing what it is. Does it anyway tell me that that you're walking over the sea ice, but you're not sure? Okay, that's one thing, but you're actually walking off it and it's collapsing. These are two different things. That maybe you're walking over something that can collapse, that can, become dangerous for you, versus you're walking over something, but you're not sure what it is. Not being sure of what it is versus that what you're walking on can become dangerous for you are two different things. What it says after that is you're walking above something, but you're not sure about what it is. So that goes to show that it's difficult to understand, but not necessarily that it is dangerous for you. If the description there would have been that when this person is walking over this sea ice, maybe there is a risk of the sea ice breaking. Maybe there's a possibility of the sea ice, collapsing. Now, if that's the sort of description given to me, precariously could have gone in, because then it gives me an idea that there is a chance of some collapse or something harming the person, something dangerous could take place. That could be an uncertainty that way. That uncertainty of danger could have given me the idea of precarious. Now, between imperceptible, let's understand the word percept. Percept means to be able to, understand, okay, recognize. Imperceptible would mean that you're not able to understand what it is. Now, with not knowing what you're walking over, I think what makes more sense is that that it's imperceptible, as you're not able to figure out, versus if this would have said that you're walking over ice, which could collapse, which can become, can be vulnerable and it can break. If that's the sort of description given, then precariously would have gone. But what it tells me is that the person is not aware of what he's walking on, versus not about the fact that the sea ice will collapse or could collapse. So given the two options B and D, the confusion is there sometimes. But what you must understand is the way it describes that it says it's about not knowing what you're walking over, not about the uncertainty of the sea ice breaking. Hence, D goes out as precariously. It does not have the evidence in the sentence, as description goes in the sense of not knowing. So imperceptible will make more sense in this case. I hope you guys were able to get this question. If you got this, please say a yes. In case you had that confusion between D and D, I hope this is clear. A quick yes on the Q&A box will do. Perfect, Sakshi. Keshav, if you also, yeah, perfect. Okay. Kaushik, if you also got it, you can say yes. Perfect, wonderful. So I hope this is clear. In case you had a confusion between B and D, I hope I was able to clarify. Please remember, guys, I don't exist in all this. Like, I don't have to add my ideas into the sentence. I'm simply taking what is given to me in the sentence, right? Let's stick to the evidence and you should be through. Okay. Now, this is a slightly lengthy question. I hope all of you can see this question. There are 3 blanks. Blank 1, you need to choose options from A, B, and C. 1 out of A, B, and C will go into blank 1. 1 out of D, E, and F will go into blank 2. And 1 out of G, H, and I will go into blank 3. Okay? Look at the sentence, evidence, and then accordingly fit it. Okay, blank 1 C, second blank is D. Okay. All right. Keshav, you can answer it for all the blanks. If you got all of it, you can answer it for all the blanks. Okay, great. Okay. All right, Keshav, thank you so much for that. Appreciate. Very, very quick. Good, no problem. Okay, first. Sakshi, you were supposed to pick, for the first blank, you were supposed to pick between A, B, and C. But I think I got it. I think you went the reverse way. All right, no problem. Okay. All right, then. Okay, thank you so much. I think you participated there, which is important. Okay, now if you look at this question, let's just look at this question to begin with. And then try to understand. Remember, there is a lot of information here. Okay, but we'll try to focus on something that's given to us as it's given to us only. Remember, as I did it in the previous question, I am not going to go beyond what's given to me. All right. It is refreshing to read a book. Look at the start. Look at the start. It is refreshing to read a book. That itself gives you a sense of positive feeling. Yes, right? Initially, it is refreshing to read a book about our planet by an author who does not, so there is a not, allow facts to be what by politics. He will not allow facts to be what by politics. Now, not allowing facts to do what by politics will overall give a positive sense. Okay. Furthermore, I don't know if you see it, but if you can see, politics is immediately followed by a colon. Now, I would like to tell you that the colon, okay, so it's a very simple way to understand the colon. Whatever you see before the colon, whatever is mentioned before the colon, that generally has its explanation, description, definition, or introduction mostly after the colon. So it's like whatever's before the colon generally has its description, those explanation of it on the other side of the colon. If I were to look at that as well, immediately after the colon says well aware of the political disputes. So that part which says well aware in itself tells you that it's describing the previous part as what? That the person is completely is like sort of aware of what's happening, which means he will not allow facts to be what by politics. So that description tells me that if the person is aware, he will not allow facts to be taken over by politics. Because if he's aware of things, he will not let facts be, you cannot say that the facts are going to be completely taken, it's like facts are taken care of. The person allows the facts to be in place, which means the part that says after the colon, it says well aware, that basically describes the part before as not allow facts to do what by politics. That basically becomes the hint for me for the first blank, which says well aware of the political disputes, plus the starting was refreshing to read a book. That, and after the colon also, it gives me some idea of what should go in the first blank. Now, if you go further about the effects of human activities on climate and biodiversity, after the comma it says this author does not permit them to dash. Now here, okay, again, going by the way it is mentioned, well aware of the political disputes about effects of this author again is mentioned with respect to the one who's written the book. He's calling that person as well aware of the political disputes. So this author again does not do what to dash. So again, the language tells me that the person is well aware. It's positive. That means the author must be not plus what. That again becomes a hint to be able to look at, which is mentioned for the second blank, his comprehensive description of what we know about biosphere. Now, so far when I read it overall, if I read it overall, what sense does it give me? It definitely gives me a positive sense for sure. It talks about the person who's well aware. It's refreshing to read. And therefore, the person will not allow what? The person will definitely not allow something negative. Please understand it this way. For the first blank and second blank, the person will not allow something negative to happen. And that way, he's going to keep things positive. Yes or no? If you can understand so far whatever I have said, I've read it till biosphere. Let's not look at it beyond biosphere. Till biosphere, when I read it, the overall sense, it talks about the way it's described. Does it give me a positive sense? If it gives me a positive sense, can I say that he will not allow something negative to happen or not permit something negative to happen, which is for the first blank and the second blank? If I see that it's not allowing something negative to happen, sense will remain positive. If on the other hand, the sense would have been negative, then the person would have not allowed something positive to be there, right? If the sense of that part would have been more negative in nature, the description would have been negative in nature, then the person would have not allowed something positive. But because the description in the first half till biosphere, the nature description of it is positive, which means not allowing something negative is going to be my way out in this case. Now, with that idea in mind, if you look at the first blank, he will not allow facts to be what by politics. Obviously, he's not going to allow facts to be completely overshadowed by politics. When I say overshadowed, which means facts are not taken just off the grid. Facts are taken into consideration, which means not allow facts to be what? Not allow facts to be overshadowed by politics. Overshadowed here would go in the negative sense, but in a sense of being aware as it's described after the colon. So not plus what? Not plus overshadowing the facts would make that person equal to aware. So when facts are not overshadowed, which means the person after the colon becomes aware. So aware is equal to the fact that you're not doing what to the facts, you're not overshadowing the facts by anything. Going further, as I said, not permitting what in the second blank, again something negative, so that the sense remains positive. As the person is aware, as this author is aware, this author does not permit to do what? If he's something positive and aware, then he's not permitting what? Not permitting something again negative. If I go with negative again in the second blank, enhance is not a negative word. Underscore would be to emphasize something, but that again is not a negative word. What are you left with? You're left with obscure. So that basically tells you not permit what? Not permit them to be obscure or unclear. His enormous gaps in knowledge. Now, further, if you see after the word biosphere, we read further, it says he emphasizes. Now, here, please understand, he emphasizes, he here is obviously the author, the enormous gaps in our knowledge, comma, the sparseness of our observations, comma, and the dash something. All right. Now, here I want to show you a pattern, which is a very common pattern on the GRE. Something, comma, and something. Now, please remember, if they're written it in this way, the tone context will not change. Okay. So if you see, he emphasizes enormous gaps in knowledge. How is the tone? Negative. Sparseness of observations, telling you that there is a lack in a way of observations. Again, the continuation of the tone is there because gaps in knowledge, enormous gaps, is negative. Sparseness of observations, negative, comma, and what comes in the third blank, given the negative tone in the first two parts, the third part after and also has to have what? Something negative. So dash, comma, and dash, like something, comma, and something, the tone remains the same throughout. Negative, comma, and something negative. So enormous gaps, negative, sparseness of observations, negative, and therefore the third blank must be something negative. If I keep that in mind as similarity, the negative, by the way, plausible would actually make it believable. That's more in a positive sense. Certainty of our entitlement, again, giving you a certainty of entitlement, something going positive. But the moment you say superficial means something that lacks depth. It's not thorough. It's not very comprehensive. That basically gives you a negative sense. Given it's talking about enormous gaps and sparseness of observations, negative, comma, and something negative. Therefore, you go with superficiality of our theories. Is this clear to all of you in terms of how it's described? Please remember, there is a lot written, but the patterns matter. For the first blank, we use the colon as description. After the colon was helping you with the first blank. For the second blank, there was this author who was described as well aware. That again helped me with the second blank, giving us the tone. For the third blank, we use the pattern something, comma, and something. So if you look at these patterns and these patterns get repeated in the future, I think you'll be able to solve questions rather quickly and know what's given to you. I hope this explanation is clear. If you have anything that you would like to mention, please let me know, or I can proceed to the next one very quickly. You clear with this explanation? A quick yes would do on the Q&A box. Okay. Kaushik, you got that as well, I hope. Okay. All right, now look at this question. Now here, right, in this case, I would like to tell you there is one blank. Like we've solved a one blank question before as well. But remember, in this case, there is one blank and 6 choices. Now here, I would like you to understand that you're supposed to fit 2 words, exactly 2 words in that blank. Okay, go ahead. You have a minute, do it. Okay, Keshav, CNA, all right. Remember the two options that you pick for this particular question. Okay, the two options you pick for this particular question have got to be contextually similar to each other. If they're going in the same blank, obviously they will be what? They will be contextually similar to each other. So if you can keep that in mind, I think you should be able to get this. Okay, let me sort of walk you through this one. So the first thing that I look at is the word although. Now, although I told you a while back is one of the standard keywords, which I believe I've showed you here as contrast indicators. You can see one of the keywords here is although, which by the way is a standard keyword. It shows a contrast effect. So you have one of the standard keywords as although. Okay. Now, if you see that word here in the sentence, somewhere you see that this word although will show you a contrast effect in the sentence. Now, what do I mean by this although as a contrast keyword? Let's understand that to begin with. It says although it does contain some pioneering ideas. Now, if you start with this part, it says does contain pioneering ideas. How is the tone of this? This is obviously giving you a more positive sense, right? It does contain some pioneering ideas, definitely gives you a positive sense. But because although is a contrast, after the comma, whatever must come, right? If before the comma here, it says there are some pioneering ideas, it gives you a positive sense. But because although is a contrast, after the comma, which is after ideas, whatever is written must overall be something negative. Okay. Now, because it must be overall something negative, I see one would hardly characterize the work as what? Now, here remember that in the second half, I'm looking for something more negative because the first part talks about something more positive. If the second half has to be negative, then it says hardly characterize work as what? The word hardly is one of the negation words. No, not. In the previous question, we saw the word not being used in a couple of blanks. Not allowed to, not permitted to. So the word not is a negation. Similarly, here, the word hardly is a negation. But what I must remember is that the second half must be something overall negative. So hardly negation plus what will overall be negative. So hardly plus something positive will overall become negative. So the first half is pioneering ideas, which is positive. After the comma, the entire part must be negative. So if it has to be negative, then hardly plus what will overall be negative? Hardly plus something positive will overall become negative. That's the simplest way to look at it. Now, if I look at that over here, I'm looking at two words fitting in, right? So remember, I have to first make those pairs and then understand. So it says orthodox, and then further it says conventional. For some of you who probably are not sure about this, orthodox and conventional go together as words that are contextually similar. Orthodox and conventional are the sort of things which are already existing and are being followed in the society. If something is orthodox or conventional, it's already being followed. So that becomes one pair. Okay. The other pair that we can see over here is something that goes in the sense of original and innovative. Okay. Original and innovative. And then apart from that, there are two more words, eccentric and trifling. These two words, by the way, have no contextual similarity, so they cannot be paired. Now, out of the 6 choices, there are 2 pairs I was able to make. One of them is orthodox and original, orthodox and conventional. The other is original and innovative. Now, orthodox and conventional is something that, as I said, is something that's being followed, right? Something that's existing in the society and is being followed as it is orthodox or conventional. The other is original and innovative. Now, out of the 2 pairs, which pair goes into this particular blank? Now, given it talks about pioneering ideas, so it's obviously talking about ideas being something quite amazing in some ways. But after the comma, it has to be overall negative. So it will be hardly plus, as I said, hardly plus something positive in the blank will overall become what? Negative. The word in the blank will be positive, But when combined with hardly, overall it will become negative. So when I look at that, orthodox and conventional really do not have a tone as such in terms of its nature. But when it comes to original and innovative, telling you something that's fresh idea, okay, something that's really groundbreaking in many ways. So original and innovative, when it's hardly original and innovative, overall it becomes what? Hardly innovative means it's not that great, or hardly original means it's not that great, telling you that it lacks that freshness in some ways. So, although it does contain some pioneering ideas, which is a good thing, contrast, it is hardly plus something positive as original plus innovative. So, hardly original and innovative would make it not that impressive, which overall becomes negative as a contrast to the part before. This all, by the way, happened because I was able to understand the standard keywords and the way it was describing those keywords over there. Now, in the 3 questions we have solved, there are a few things I want to show you out of the 12 that we used. We did use the colon in one of the questions. We used the negation and contrast in the previous, the question that we just solved, we used the negation and contrast. Before that, in the 3 blank question, again, I showed you the negation in some ways. So when it comes to the understanding of a sentence, and I use the comma rule with the 3 blank question where I saw something, comma, and something. The comma in a way tells you something which connects 2 parts. So if I look at it, I was able to solve the 3 questions by actually somewhere using these ideas, the 12 that matter the most. Okay, so when it comes to this overall picture of, how we solve questions, I think generally speaking, when it comes to the GRE, the approach has to be very clear. We have to be sure about what exactly we will do when you're solving a question. Now, I can tell you when we're solving questions, we'll have 2 things in mind. First, we're going to look at the web, that is in terms of understanding keywords, tone, and context, how they are linked together. And then using the 12, which, by the way, I showed you in a glimpse when we solved 3 questions. We were using that 12 in some way or the other. By using these 2 things, the web and the 12, I should be able to solve literally any SC question, any blank-based question. I should be able to do it somewhere. So I think these things work together when it comes to understanding the concepts of solving any text completion question. But I think that is the way it works in general. When it comes to the GRE specific vocabulary, something I did speak about yesterday, I did sort of discuss this idea that when it comes to GRE specific vocabulary, please know that you're supposed to know words in the GRE context. You're not supposed to assume the meaning of a word and think that this word I know a certain way and I would like to use it only as that. I discussed this word cow yesterday, C-O-W, cow. When I generally say cow, the first thing that comes to our mind is the animal. But no one would know, no one would straight away think that this cow would relate as a verb, as basically using the word cow to show intimidating someone or threatening someone. Cow, when used in the verb form, it would mean intimidate or threaten somebody. So technically speaking, I think when it comes to this overall idea, vocabulary on GRE is different from the general vocabulary. So the compilation of the words have to be done in the GRE specific way. So when it comes to that, I generally recommend people to have a cluster method of learning words. The GRE overall 320 score that people look at overall, somewhere if we are able to follow the strategies and get the verbal section right more often than not, I think we will be able to score that verbal 155 and quant 165. These 2 scores that I mentioned there to reach the GRE 320 are absolutely possible if you stick to the basics. Do not try anything ordinary or out of the ordinary. Just make sure you stick to the basics, follow the strategies as it is, look at things the way they are taught to you. I think you should be able to score that 320 on GRE without any problem whatsoever. Okay, so the GRE 320 equation actually is based on sticking to the basics. Do your basics right, and the verbal 155 and quant 165 becomes absolutely realistic for you. Right, and that pretty much is from what I wanted to discuss. Plus, when it comes to the AECC's GRE prep. My name is Rohan. I help students prepare for the GRE over here, and basically we end up helping students when it comes to getting the kind of score that they wish to get. But our approach more often than not is to stick to the strategies and follow strategies in a way that we can apply to any question that we can get on our, that we get our way. Because when you encounter a particular question, you're not sure about the strategy to begin with, then you don't really know what to do with it. So when it comes to applying strategies, it has to be about being clear in your head. These are 2-3 things that I'm supposed to look for. If my mind is trained for that, I'm only looking at things in a process specific way and follow that process, I should be able to get questions right more often than not. In our preparation, of course, I will help students get, as much help as possible in verbal, of course, and quant further going. And, we have a more comprehensive program that way. We'll try to get as many practice questions for students as possible. But yes, the idea overall is to have a no-nonsense approach. Keep things simple, try to bring it down to 2 or 3 ideas. And if you follow only those 2 or 3 ideas, you should be able to get things right. Okay. That's basically about it from my side. If you have any questions, Keshav or Kaushik, I'll be more than happy to answer. You have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer. Keshav or Kaushik? Keshav, Kaushik? Any questions? You can put it on the Q&A box. I'll be more than happy to address. Kaushik, Keshav, any questions? You can put it on the Q&A box so I can. No questions? Okay, then I believe that is about it. Thank you very much again for staying patient, staying with me for all this while. And I hope I was able to address a few things for you today. Thank you so much for your patience. Kaushik, you still have any questions? I'll be able to take those if you're okay with it. Otherwise, I will end the session then. Okay, then. Thank you so much. I appreciate your patience and time. I would like to see you guys soon on some of the other webinars that we're going to come up with. More information, more questions, more strategies in the future. But again, thank you so much. It's always wonderful to deliver sessions when it comes to delivering something that really makes a difference in people's lives, and especially if they're attempting a test. But thank you so much. I appreciate. Goodbye. Take care.